Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Bryce and Sam with Unopinionated Sports. We're so stoked to be with you guys. We're recording this Monday morning, so right after the games from last night. We're super stoked to get into it, so we're just going to dive right in. Sam, let me know what you thought about that Chiefs-Ravens game.
Absolutely. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm in Texas today, so in a place I'm not normally at. So anyway, the game was kind of crazy. It was close. The first half was close. I really wanted to be a close game. I didn't have a rooting interest. Yeah, I'm from Kansas City, so I did. I mean, I do like watching the Chiefs, but some interesting things is I just felt like the Ravens weren't as prepared as the Chiefs. Pretty point and simple.
Yeah.
Andy Reid outcoached John Harbaugh. Some interesting points is the Ravens pretty much abandoned the run at some
Yep.
point in the game, which I thought was not like the Ravens. The Ravens run to open up the pass.
Yep.
They had 16 carries as a team, and that included 8 from Lamar Jackson. So
So
I thought
8
that was very
handoffs. That's
shocking.
insane.
Eight of the carries were Lamar Jackson, and then there was 8 additional carries. So that's Lamar Jackson was half of the running attempts,
Yeah.
and they had 81 yards. And yes, I know they've had injuries, but when Zay Flowers was 2 of those 8 attempts that weren't Lamar, that's a problem for concern. They just completely abandoned their identity, I thought, on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
And then they got to a point where they had to rely on playing catch up. And then the personal, Zay Flowers just was kind of a punk at the end there. He kind of cost them
Yeah.
a couple times.
100%.
I know. Yeah. So what do you think, Bryce?
So I do just want to talk about that Zay Flowers penalty in particular, and just the penalties in general, because I've seen a lot of people whining last night, this morning, about the refs. And I just want to say, anyone that says that the refs are the MVP for the Chiefs last night did not watch that game.
No.
They did not watch that game. In particular, obviously that one missed call against Likely was bad. That was a bad missed call. But on the touchdown, a lot of people are saying, oh, you have to call passing interference on that. He had no chance of getting that ball whatsoever. Okay? So if you want to say that the guy that called for the ball in triple coverage and got like undercut, sure, you can throw that flag, but that's not going to change the fact that they still get the ball, for one, right? Because it did not alter whether or not he was going to catch the ball or whether or not the defender was going to get that ball. Right? So, best case scenario, you're asking for 15 yards back from the 25. Right? So, that was ridiculous. There's also a play where Lamar almost got sacked for a safety, where Justice Hill completely just threw his leg out and tripped Chris Jones right in front of the ref. And it was so blatant. They didn't call that either. It was a lot. There's a few missed calls on both sides, but that Zay Flowers penalty, he got up and then shoved the guy to the ground and then threw the ball at him and then stood over him and flexed him. That is getting called every single time. I don't think... Yep. I think shoving him to the ground is too much. Right? I think that's a line no matter what. I hate the taunting penalty as a general rule. I always hated it, and then when the Bears got called on it against the Steelers that one time where the ref hip-checked the guy, that gave me an even more invigorated sense of hatred for the rule, but that is when it should be called. When you are getting up and then literally shoving a guy to the ground, I think that's over the line of what should and shouldn't be flagged. He cost him the game. That is 100% squarely on Zay Flowers. They should have been 15 yards up from the spot on that catch, and then he probably doesn't fumble because he probably doesn't get the ball that close to the end zone. They probably run the ball in. So, yeah. And then you look at, like you said, they handed the ball off 8 times. The Chiefs defense, I could be wrong on this, but I believe I saw they were 28th against the run this year.
Yeah, they gave up gashing games against average teams sometimes.
And they were one of the best defenses against the pass on top of that. So going through the air is not the way to beat that Chiefs defense, and everybody knew that. I'm not sure why they just completely abandoned the run. It's not like they were down 3 scores. The most they were down is 10. So
no one was... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
no one was getting separation really
Right.
most of the game for Lamar. Odell Beckham's washed. We knew that. He's a shell of himself. Zay Flowers, the Chiefs just started double teaming him at points in the game. And then is it Bateman that's there too?
Yeah.
They just weren't getting open. I mean, there's names there, there's talent there, but they just weren't getting open. I'm sure Mark Andrews, I think he came back hurt.
Yeah.
He wasn't taking over the game like he normally does, but I don't blame him for trying to come back. But yeah, and then the Ravens defense didn't really play like the Ravens at times in the game either.
Right.
They're a great defense, and at times they were okay. But really, Mahomes is Mahomes.
Exactly. I was going to say that. I call that the Mahomes effect. Like, and I mean, I told you when we were doing our predictions last week, I will never bet against Mahomes.
You can't.
It's the same thing with Brady, right? Like, you never bet against Brady. You never bet against Mahomes either. The guy's made it to the AFC Championship game every single year that he's been a starting quarterback in this league. That is ridiculous.
Is that 6 or 7 years in a row now? It's crazy.
6 years in a row. Yeah, you might need to restart your camera again. You're frozen. But I think we need to have the conversation about the GOAT debate. Right? Like,
it's coming up here.
The conversation needs to start, I think. Because even, like, you look at Brady, right? I think it's kind of like, I'm almost seeing it as like a Jordan versus LeBron debate at this point, right?
It's getting that direction anyway.
Like, Brady has the longevity, has the accolades, and then Mahomes has what? He has a chance for 4 rings, or is it 3 rings in 6 years? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, 3 rings in 6 years.
And it's not like basketball where you can, when you have a really good team, you just go to the finals every year. Like, this is football, where it's single elimination, and he's only lost against Burrow in the best year. Sorry, my dog's crying over here. He lost against Tom Brady, and then he lost against Joe Burrow in the best year of his career. Right? He's incredible. When I watched that game yesterday, what I saw was the difference between greatness and really good. Right? Lamar Jackson is a really good quarterback.
Yes.
But I started looking up some stats, and what I realized was that against the Texans, do you know how many snaps the Texans had inside the red zone?
Against the Texans, against the red zone? I don't.
0. The Texans didn't have a single snap inside the red zone last week.
That's wild.
Okay? So, I personally cannot attribute that win to Lamar Jackson when their defense kept Houston out of the red zone all night. So, you look at this game, where this was Lamar's chance to prove everyone that said he couldn't do it on the big stage wrong. This was the opportunity to do it, and he just couldn't. He just couldn't do it. There was a lot of bad plays, like we said, the Zay Flowers play, and they absolutely need another receiver. So I'm not going to say that he will never be able to do it, but for now, I'm going to label him as one of those guys that just can't get it done when it matters, and I think it's hard to put him in any category other than that.
Yeah.
All right. 49ers Lions.
Yeah, so that game was wild, man. Lions had it at halftime.
Yep.
It'll set it best. I'll admit they beat us in the first half.
Yeah.
And they did. It's almost like the Lions had a great game plan or a great script for the first half.
Yep.
They just did what they did best. They ran, they threw, they really ran the ball dominantly all first half.
Yeah.
That made the 49ers defense not look like the best front line in the league.
Right.
For majority of the game, but then all of a sudden it's almost like they ran out of energy, and number one, it seemed like they ran out of offensive creativity too. Yeah. They just got vanilla, and then Campbell made some. I get it. This is all gas, no brakes. That's the way he plays. But maybe kick one of those field goals. I don't know. Maybe kick one of them. But that's just what got him there. Really, is playing this reckless abandon, Madden style offense where just go for it. and then look where we are. And the 49ers, though, they did a committee approach. Everyone played a role. Brock Purdy had 5 carries for 48 yards.
He
When
was
they
he was
really needed
moving
him
out
most,
there.
Brock took the team and said, "Hey, I'm
Yep.
going to get this first down. They don't think I'm going to run. Watch this."
Yeah, he had some wheels for sure. It
Yeah,
was
it was
incredible to watch.
impressive. And Campbell got out coached by Shanahan. I mean,
Yep.
that's really what it came down to.
We're really seeing that coaching is the most underrated facet. Um,
Yeah.
and I think your camera froze on you again, but
It's moving on my end, so that's weird.
um, I just watching this game, all I could think was same old Lions, man. Like the Lions just cannot have nice things. Um,
No.
it's absurd, honestly. I mean, Jared Goff couldn't handle the pressure, literally and figuratively. Um, and that we all know that's recipe to beat him, right? As soon as you start getting some pressure on him and he has to move out of the pocket, he kind of crumbles. And uh yeah, can you restart your camera again? I'm getting a lot of buffering on this end. But
Sure.
I think this is the Lions shot, dude. I really do. Like we were talking about before, I hear Ben Johnson of the commies is a done deal, but they're also interviewing some guys. Um, so that's
Yep.
worth monitoring. But they need, and I mean need, a great play caller for this team to function. For this offense
Yeah.
to be what it was this year, they need a top tier play caller. Johnson gave them an identity that's unique, right? Like this
Yeah.
two back power run system where they've become the most dynamic rushing attack in football. Replacing that play caller is going to make them very, very difficult because I almost feel like their only real option is to promote from within, and you have to hope that he doesn't bring anybody with him.
Yeah. Or from the college ranks. They could always pull
Right,
from the college ranks since they kind of run a college style offense.
right.
But you're right, the pickings are slim. I mean, it's where a lot of teams have hired their staffs or are real close to it. So it'll be interesting. And the NFC North is going to be good for a long
Right.
time. So this was the Lions' year to win it. We know that. The Vikings will be better next year, especially if Cousins comes back. The Packers are locked in for long term. The Bears should be. It
We'll
just
see.
depends on
I'm
what
I'm
they
not
do.
getting my hopes up. I learned that mistake a long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
the Niners are just incredible. To your point, I think Shanahan just showed how much of a genius he is with the second half adjustments.
Yep.
Right. Just absolutely incredible. And even just looking forward, Super Bowl is going to come down to Kansas City's defense.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to come down to. Can Kansas City's defense shut down Brock Purdy for 3 quarters? Right. If you can shut down that offense for 3 quarters, then goodness. If you can shut down that offense for 3 quarters, you have a really good shot at winning because you're not going to be able to shut them down for a whole game. It's just not going to
No.
happen.
And Mahomes will get his points, but if you can limit it, with constant pass rush like the 49ers can do, they'll be in good shape. If they can keep it a one-score game and go into the fourth quarter, they're in good shape. But
Right.
it'll be a heck of a Super Bowl. It really will be. This is one of the better Super Bowl matchups I think we've had in a while.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be the best Super Bowl in a while. And the other thing I wanted to point out, CJ Gardner Johnson waving goodbye up 21-3 or whatever it was. That guy's a bozo. An absolute
Yes.
clown. I cannot stand him. Oh my goodness, makes me so glad to see him lose every single time. But anyway, so we're talking about coaches. Should have said that for the end of the conversation for a really easy segue. I know you got some grades on some of the coaching hires, so tell me what you got.
Yeah. So for fun, I just Googled. I'm like, hey, what are grades? It's just fun to read. So I went to this nice article that just came out the other day. This is by someone on USA Today, Christian Deandra. It's a good article, basically, and you can Google it and read it later. But I'm just going to read a few one-liners. So they did like the move for Jared Mayo because hiring Bill Belichick assistants rarely work out, which is true. And they said hiring former players has a better track record. So they're thinking because he straddles the line between both camps as a linebacker coach and defensive coordinator, who's well respected. They think it's going to work out fine, and it's not like flashy, but he's promoting within. That's
Right.
usually a good thing. They liked Antonio Pierce because they pointed out how statistically when he took over, their defense
Yep.
rose. You know, in the locker room, you could just see. I mean, they were a lifted
Right.
organization from when he was there. I get that one. Brian Callahan with the Titans. Callahan's departure won't just be a hinge for the Titans. It'll help us figure out. It'll help them figure out if Zach Taylor was the one bringing out the best or if it was the offensive
Right.
coordinator. They have a good point because they made Browning look really good. At times, he looked like, oh, should teams go pick him up? But he's
Right.
at least a really good backup quarterback. So you got that. They gave him a B minus. Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh's Jim Harbaugh. Like him or don't like him, he's a quarterback guru. I think he's going to ascend. What's his face? Quarterback. I can't think of his name. Justin Herbert. He's going to take Herbert up a notch. He's already good. A lot of people think he's a good fit there. They gave him an A. The Panthers, which we'll dive into in a little bit, because I know you want to rant about that.
Yeah.
The Panthers, they gave him a grade of a B. They said he doesn't. He said, fortunately for the Panthers, he's a rising star, and they don't have. After they've gone 0 for 2 for coaches, they're paying two
Right.
coaches a combined $50 million, so they couldn't do anything too flashy. The Falcons' grade is interesting. So we talked about that last podcast. Morris, he's known for his defense, so the Falcons
Right.
are going to have to hit home runs on the offensive side of the ball with talent and coaching. They give him a C plus pending his offensive coordinator hire. So that
That's
really
the
they said
big
it could
thing.
have been a D.
Yeah.
Yeah, so depending his hire. So those are the ones so far. You want to talk a little bit about the Panthers hire, Bryce, since we're in the coaching?
Yeah. Can you just restart your camera again? I don't know what's going on. You're freezing
Yep.
all over the place for some reason. But I think hiring Dave Canales is a very interesting choice. I think the most notable thing about the hire is actually the contract itself. So Canales is one of 3 coaches currently in the league that have received a 6-year contract. All right? And those guys are Kyle Shanahan, Dan Campbell, and D'Amico Ryans. Obviously, those situations worked out pretty well. The contract, from what I've heard, when you get a contract that big as a coach, it's supposed to be a gesture of patience, which is very interesting given how Tepper tends to treat coaches, right? We saw the Frank Reich hire getting fired so early in the season. And when you look at those other situations, right? Shanahan, Campbell, Ryans, in theory, they've all turned out pretty well, right? All 3 of those teams made the playoffs.
Yeah.
2 of them made it to the played against each other in the NFC Championship game. But there's a common thread, right? Shanahan is one of the greatest offensive geniuses in NFL history. Ben Johnson, for Dan Campbell, is the mind behind, like we said, probably the best run scheme we've seen in a very long time. And Bobby Slowick, for D'Amico Ryans, is a Shanahan disciple that managed to develop Stroud into a superstar in 1 season. So this is going to work. Canales needs to be not close to, he needs to be an offensive genius.
Yes.
Right? Otherwise, they're going to be setting their team back 15 years. Right? Because next year, they don't have their first pick this year in a loaded quarterback class. And next year, the quarterback class is really weak. So it's tough to gauge, in fairness, over a whole nother year of college football like that. But it's very difficult to tell whether or not Canales is that talented of a play caller with all the weapons that they had in Cincy. Obviously, like you said, the season was very encouraging in that regard because T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were hurt all the time. It felt like it was whenever you saw one of them, you didn't see the other one. But also, Joe Burrow going down halfway through the season, throwing Jake Browning into the mix. And I looked at his stats. I don't think I have them written down, but I think he was on pace for like 3,800 yards, which is a very good season.
Yeah.
So if you can get a Jake Browning season from Bryce Young, you're ecstatic right now, right? Like you're blown away. Granted, he's a number 1 pick, right? And so that's where you get in trouble, I think. He needs to be playing to a number 1 pick. You can't have Bryce Young on your roster, paying him first overall pick money, and have him playing like a mid-round player, right? The major question is, can Bryce Young, without a first-round pick, with only $30 million in cap space this year, put up a Jake Browning stat line. I looked at some of the receivers that are available. I would love to see T. Higgins follow Canales. That would be incredible for them, but I think he's going to be too expensive, right? Because they're also, like, Brian Burns is a free agent this year, and if you lose him, you don't have a single pass rusher of note on your team.
Right.
And T. Higgins, even he's not DJ Moore, right? That's the big thing.
No.
Right, and I think DJ Moore actually cemented himself as like a top 7 receiver in the league this year, but you need to get Bryce a true number 1 receiver for him to have any chance at succeeding in the league. Some other realistic wide receivers I thought they could target. OBJ would be a guy that you'd just be taking a shot on and hope you can get something out of him. Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, Michael Pittman, and Tyler Boyd. Those are the only guys that I saw that I think could really make a difference. You know better than me about Ridley, so I'll let you talk about that in a second. But I think Ridley and Hollywood are the only real difference makers that they could really afford or have a chance of getting. So what do you think? Can Ridley be the number 1?
I watched every Ridley game. At times, he looks like a number 1, but honestly, being a Jaguars fan, Kirk's the number 1 in Jacksonville. Yeah. Ridley's the number 2 there. And I just don't think he's the number 1. But to be fair, this was his first season in 2 years. I actually hope the Jaguars bring him back at a decent rate. But unfortunately, he's probably going to want some decent money. Yeah. And I wouldn't be shocked if we let him go to Carolina if he wants to. And honestly, Carolina has money. If they want to throw money at him, he can be a number 1 there. But really, he's a number 2. Until he shows me otherwise, he's a number 2. So more power to him. I don't want the Jaguars to get him unless they're paying him, less than Kirk. Right. Kirk's worth his money. I just don't know if Ridley's worth that money. As weird as that is to say, he just didn't get separation consistently that I would like in a number 1 receiver. A fun fact for the Panthers, by the way, for Panther fans, under David Temper, since they've owned the team, we talked about it a little bit, but since 2018, they're tied with the Jets for the worst record in the NFL, 31-68. That's terrible. And Canales will be their 7th head coach under Temper. So that's crazy. That's a winning percentage of .313, and that's 7 coaches.
That's
that amount of time. So.
That's bad, man.
So a lot of pressure on this new coach, but I guess he has 6 years to prove it. So,
I mean, we say that, but it's like you said. Do you know how long he's on the team? I don't remember.
How long he's on the team?
He's owned the team?
Yeah, since 2018. That's the entirety of his tenure.
What? So that's...
It's almost a coach a year.
That I think that is a coach a year. Right? Yeah. So that's more than a coach a year, because that's only 5 years. So he's had 7 coaches in 5 years. I know that having this contract is supposed to be a symbol of patience. But I just don't believe that he's going to... I don't trust that he's going to be able to be patient. I just don't.
Temper doesn't have patience. He threw water at Jags fans at their games. So.
Exactly.
Well, thanks, Bryce. I enjoyed the Panthers topic, and I'm sure you guys did too. Thank you for listening. Bryce and I like doing this. This is just for fun. If it takes off, that would be awesome. But we're just having a good time. We look forward to having some friends on down the road to have some insight. I think we'll each maybe have a buddy on to talk about the Super Bowl. We have 2 weeks to talk about Super Bowl preview and Pro Bowl preview. So anyway, we just thank you guys for listening. We enjoy doing this. Comment on some of our feeds, your favorite football team. We'd love to hear what teams you guys like.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I'm maybe going to take that a step further. I think a really fun thing to do would we're going to recap every team's season over the course of the off season, and just kind of stick with the concept of the good and bad and the ugly, and just give a little bit of an overview. And so if you guys let us know your favorite teams, we'll make sure to cover those first. And yeah, we're actually going to have another video coming out later this week. I think I'm going to upload it for Thursday. So if you guys just stay tuned for that, it's going to be in way too early 3-round mock draft. It's going to be a PPR, 1 quarterback, 2 receiver league. And if you guys are interested in playing fantasy football, let us know. Nothing would be more fun than having a league with you guys that we can keep track of together as we go through the year next year.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you guys again so much. We will see you guys in the next video.
Thanks, guys.